he didn't read a single book by a saint or church father. Now, you'd think if you're going to talk about the ancient Christian world, you would want to read this material, be familiar with it. You'd think someone would prepare for this. And then he started making very slimy sophistry type statements. I just started kind of losing my temper more and more.
You recently had a debate with, he goes by Dr. Bob.
Yes.
And what denomination is Dr. Bob?
Dr. Bob is a Reformed Baptist who holds to something called, I'm probably going to butcher this, Pedro, you'll probably know it, the 1689 Second London Confession, something like that.
It's called the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. Also, another version of it would be the 1641 Westminster Confession of Faith. It pretty much lines out some of the details for us Calvinists.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I hold to it too.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I was wondering if you take a couple of minutes and walk us through how this debate came to be.
Sure. So I have to say, I'm going to front load the story by saying Roosh feels very bad about the story I'm about to tell, because he feels like he was tricked by Dr. quote Bob, which is not his real name. So Roosh knows this guy in person. He said, this guy is a friend of mine. We've had lunch a few times. He's very devout, takes his faith very seriously. He's a medical doctor. I had some people in the comments saying he's not a doctor, he's a PA. But that turned out not to be true. That was fake news. He's a doctor. He said he wants to discuss or have a debate with you about Christianity. So I said, okay. And Dr. Bob proposed a few different topics. So we went back and forth through Roosh as mediator to kind of hammer out the exact topic and the theme, until I said, hey, let me just email him directly so kind of Roosh doesn't have to play middleman anymore. And in our conversations, he comes off as extremely friendly and in good faith and charitable and honest. So people, I know we'll get into this later, but people couldn't tell what I was so upset about during the debate until his closing statement, because they didn't see the fake friendliness that he was showing both to me and to Roosh. And in fact, last time I checked, he didn't even talk to Roosh again after our debate. And now there's another Orthodox guy called Cabane, a guy named Sarah from Hamilton, who's going to go out and have lunch with Dr. Bob. And I was like, dude, just to warn you, like the face that he shows to you of this like kind, inquiring guy that just wants to learn more about Orthodoxy, have a conversation, that's not his agenda at all. So I felt very, the man that showed up at the debate, to make this short, make my answer short, was not the man that I was emailing with beforehand. It was, I felt like the presentation he showed me was not accurate. And
you were baited.
Lied to. Yeah, I was fooled. And interestingly enough, after the debate, a friend of his from real life, or an acquaintance, I should say, messaged me privately, said, just so you know, this is Dr. Bob's MO with the Orthodox. He told me that Dr. Bob and a friend actually went to an OCA church to talk to the priest, almost like pretending to be inquirers, wanting to learn more about it. But secretly, he was just trying to get the priest to say some gotcha thing for him to be able to attack. And when I brought this up to Dr. Bob, I emailed him and said, hey, just so you know, people that know you are telling me that you do this all the time. And Dr. Bob said, oh, I know who that is. And he gave me a name. And it wasn't the guy that emailed me. So apparently Dr. Bob has built quite a reputation for himself, going around lying to the Orthodox.
This kind of a trend behavior. So
yeah.
if I got this right, this was set up through Roosh V then.
Yes, but he was genuinely bamboozled. He was not taking part in the deception. He felt really bad about it afterwards.
Oh no, sure. Yeah, I mean, you don't have any way to know when you're putting the debate together how it's going to turn out at all. And
Roosh knew the guy in person. He'd had lunch with him a couple times. I think he'd met him on his tour, his Babylon Road tour. So yes, the short answer is it was put together through Roosh, who is probably repenting about it at the monastery right now.
Gotcha. So you show up day of, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start off. It looked like everything was going good at first.
It did.
Right? It looked like everything was going good at first. So how I stumbled onto that is I'm a subscriber to Brother Augustine's channel. I strongly suggest that everybody who watches this broadcast go subscribe immediately.
Oh, thank you.
The reason that I subscribed was twofold. First, to learn more about Orthodoxy. And then second, because I really, really enjoy the occult lectures.
Mm-hmm.
I find them fascinating. They've been very useful to my own research, this kind of thing. But in any case, I get this notification, right? And it's like, he's live. And I said, well, let's check out what's going on. And I see a good old fashioned combat, debate about to take place. And I go, well, I set the cell phone up and I kick my feet up and I go, let's watch Brother Augustine get it on, right? Mm. Sounds good faith at first.
Yeah.
Everything's going pretty well at first. So what happens from the opening statement?
So I gave my opening statement, which let me also add this. I had watched about 4 hours of Dr. Bob. Let me rephrase. I had suffered through about 4 hours of Dr. Bob talking with Vocab Malone to just try and get an idea of what he's into, what he believes. And so I kind of knew some
take care of that, Pedro? Go ahead.
I kind of knew some of what he was going to say ahead of time. And so I set up my opening statement specifically to get around certain objections he was going to have. Like any good person would do, you anticipate the objections, anticipate your other person's arguments, and you want to frame it in a way that proves your side and then cuts off the other guy's arguments before they even start. And people kept asking me to publish my opening statement afterwards. So I actually did put up a text document, my 20-minute opening statement.
Where can people find that?
It's in my community tab, actually. There's a link to the RTF document there. And one thing I was not expecting, I kind of had to speed read through my opening to hit the 20-minute mark. And what I didn't anticipate was that in that act of speed reading, it actually made me very anxious because I'm like talking much faster than I'm used to. And I'm like feeling the pressure of getting my opening statement out on time. So by the time Dr. Bob started lying and doing his whole thing, my physiology was kind of already in a fight or flight sort of state. Like I was already kind of elevated just from having to talk so fast, which is on me. I knew it was going to be a lot of information I was trying to pack into the 20 minutes. I didn't have time to practice it, to get the cadence down. And I finished with just a few seconds left, I think. So right in the 20-minute mark. So I give my opening statement, and the thesis of the debate is, does Christianity teach that there is a special, distinct sacramental priesthood apart from the general priesthood of all believers? So I go through all the biblical examples that only the apostles and those they've ordained by a laying on of hands can celebrate sacraments, can forgive sins, can do this and that, all the parts where Jesus specifically calls them aside, gives them special privileges or power, if you will, all the things about ordination of future bishops, laying on of hands. And then I went through the first 400 years of church history, showing that all these verses were interpreted in the exact same way, which was my side of the argument. His opening statement didn't even really address the topic at hand. He never attempted to address me talking about how ordination was set up. You heard at the end that whole weird word game he tried to play with disciples and apostles. Like, well, in this verse, they're called disciples, so it applies to all the disciples, even if they're only it was only 12 in the room. It was this whole stupid thing he was doing. Never really addressed any of the stuff that I brought up from the church fathers either. He kept bringing up points like that the word sacerdotal implies something that the apostles and their ordained successors didn't have. And then he starts quoting Tertullian, which was perfect because I had a quote already lined up talking about how when Tertullian translated the word priest in his tract called On Baptism, the word he used in Latin was sacerdos, which is also the word that Jerome used. And as this went back and forth, I also have to say one more thing, this kind of a knock on myself here. It was my first formal debate with a structure, and I was not familiar with what the different parts of it were. I didn't know actually what a cross-exam was, and this is totally on me. I should have looked into this ahead of time. I spent 100% of my energy putting the arguments together.
But the difference between an informal debate and a formal debate are night and day.
As I've learned. So
they're night and day. I made the same mistake. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
I did not.
I've spent whatever you would call my debate career as a blood sporter. I enjoy the conflict and I enjoy the confrontational aspects of it and this kind of thing. I did do a formal debate and it did not go well for me.
Gotcha.
And I was very lucky. The person who did it with me was very kind and walked me through the different aspects of this. It's a whole different animal. So don't feel too bad about it.
I appreciate that. Speaking of blood sports, I don't know if you guys heard, but at 9:30 at night Pacific time a couple nights ago, Michael Sisko texted me, "Hey, Adam Green is on the Kill Stream with Ethan Ralph talking about Christianity. Here's a link. You should call in and talk to them." So I did. I talked to them a little bit. And I guess Ethan now wants to talk to me, so hopefully I'll be showing up on the Kill Stream soon, talking about orthodoxy and whatnot.
You'll be in good company. I've been on the Kill Stream.
Nice.
I took on Beardson Beardley, and it was a lot of fun. Ethan Ralph's a good guy. I can't recommend enough that people. I know that a lot of people have criticisms of him. All I can do is tell you how he's treated me, which has been very good. So
yeah, I'm sure we won't agree on everything, but as long as he's cordial and cool, like I have no problem going on talking with him.
Oh no, you'll have a good time.
Can I ask really quick? So I actually really like formal debate, the form that you guys took, because each person gets to perfectly frame their argument, and then there's a specific time for you to start making your cross-examination. Whereas, I don't get me wrong, I like the blood sport style where it's get in where you can, but there's usually sometimes the other person doesn't really get in there moment if it's overpowering. Which one did you like more? Do you like more, if you have to say, blood sport style or structure?
I don't really like the blood sport style too much. I know I've kind of dipped in and out of it with my debates with Marty Leeds and Kurt Doolittle, but it's not like it was planned that way. I'm just kind of responding in the moment to things. I think if I had known what the formal debate, like what was actually expected of me in the various segments of it, I think I would have liked that. Even though after Bob's opening statement, I just declared victory and declared the debate over, and I stand by that. I mean, I don't think his opening statement even addressed the topic at hand. He couldn't address any of my statements rather, or questions about the Eucharist. I asked whether he can forgive my sins, who can't forgive my sins, and he was very obviously flustered by this. And it turned out, I thought he had not prepared at all. It turned out he prepared very heavily, just in a completely wrong direction. I guess his whole parish was involved in this. Like his quote elders at his quote church were all involved in this. And for him, this was like this big moment of the gospel is at stake. I must prove my case and this and that. But the weirdest thing is we're talking about ancient Christianity. And as was called out in the super chats, he didn't read a single book by a saint or church father. Now, you'd think if you're going to talk about the ancient Christian world, you would want to read this material, be familiar with it. And I had super chatters asking, what did he read in preparation? So he listened to a couple ancient faith radio podcasts, and he read a book by Father Alexander Schmemann. Now, there's good and bad in all this stuff, but none of that is about how the Bible is interpreted by the people that it was written to in the ancient Christian world. And that's, of course, of primary importance when we're talking about Christianity, not just what do the verses say, but how were these verses understood in their immediate context by people that knew the apostles, and in some cases, like St. Polycarp of Smyrna, for example, were discipled directly by the apostles. Like St. John the Apostle was St. Polycarp's spiritual father, his priest. So if these guys are interpreting something in a certain way, that's obviously very, very important to understand what the message was in context. And I was very surprised that Bob did zero research about this, besides it sounded like reading Richard Hanson and Philip Schaff, and then just taking their out of context church father quotes instead of reading the source material himself. So as the debate went on, and it became more and more obvious to me that he didn't prepare in the way that you'd think someone would prepare for this, and then he started making very slimy sophistry type statements, I just started kind of losing my temper more and more. Now,
I wanted to say, just real quick, didn't mean to interrupt, but I think this flows fairly well with what you were saying. Right in the center of the debate, which is where I think you're about to get to, where I started to really lose my cool, was when it became an interview. When it became an interview, that's when I started to yell at my phone, shake my fist a little bit, throw things around the room just a tad, right? It was about the time it became an interview. And this is that lead up you're talking about.
Yeah. And I said to him at one point, because he said, Brother Augustine, this is the kind of conversation I wanted to have. And I said, then why didn't you ask to just have a conversation about orthodoxy, or ask me about it, instead of a debate about a topic that you're just now on a live stream in the middle of our debate, just now asking questions about what we even believe. Like, I wouldn't go and debate a Hindu, for example, if I plan on using the debate to find out what he believes. That's not the time and place for that. Like, if he wanted to do an interview, sure, I'd be super happy to do that. Not now that I know his character or lack thereof, but at the time I would have happily agreed to it. Now, there's a nice fruit that came from this, though, which was that right as I was kind of feeling bad about it, I don't know if you saw yesterday, I posted an interview with Father Turbo Qualls, a Black priest in the Serbian Archdiocese, which is a pretty rare combination of traits, I think. He saw my debate and congratulated me on doing such a good job defending the faith. And I was kind of stunned, because Father Turbo in his past has been very woke, very into like racialist ideology and stuff. And I wasn't expecting someone like that to be watching a channel like mine, until I found out he's actually turned away from all that stuff, repented of a lot of it. And that's what our conversation was about. But, this great interview came out of this debate and the correspondence that came after. So even in these moments where things seem a little chaotic, God's providence is always reigning supreme over it. He always knows what the plan is, even if we in the middle of the plan don't understand the full picture of it.